Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Wowhead Weekly episode 27. We've got a bunch of interesting stuff to talk to you about this week, but first let me introduce my co-host, Wowhead site manager, Peculiar. How are you doing this week, Puck?
I am doing pretty good, back from PAX and diving right back into 6.1 stuff.
Excellent. Yes, we actually had it. Well, sorry, we're running this a little bit late for those of you who are tuning in on Twitch. We actually had a build happen as we set up here, we were all sitting here, we were all just like ready to go, we were about to send our tweet and start the stream, and then we get the build warning come up. So there's a new build onto the 6.1.2 PTR, which we had to then process and put up on the site. Not a ton of cool stuff in the build.
Yeah, just the WoW token now has shinier icons, basically.
Yeah, it's very shiny.
Yeah, nothing too exciting. Hot fixes are now in tooltip, so yay updates, but yeah, was not anything too big to cover, at least.
No, exactly, but we do like to keep an eye on them every time there's one coming up. There's been a lot of small builds lately onto the 612 PTR, so we just want to keep an eye on them in case they put something amazing in them, like mounts or pets or something cool like that.
Or the actual WoW token.
Yeah, the price of the WoW token, that would be a big thing for us to find out about. So we had a bunch of cool stuff going on this week, apart from this kind of disappointing little build. We had the BlizzCon announcement. That's obviously relatively huge.
Yeah, so, I was surprised it was so early.
It was, because you were telling us when they actually announced BlizzCon last year was around like late April, right?
Yes,
Mid to late April.
I want to say it was April 22nd,
that sounds about right.
It was still early November when they had BlizzCon, so this feels a bit, it's like a month earlier.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. Like, I don't know whether there's any kind of conclusions that we can draw from that, but it's certainly interesting at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just like, there's like a lull between patches and there's player interest, so mention BlizzCon now.
Who knows?
Start the hype train early.
Yeah, it's going to be a long trip on the hype train all the way to BlizzCon. But yeah, so tickets are $199 again, just like last year. So although we saw a price hike last time around, we're not going to be seeing another one this time. That's good news. They are available on Eventbrite again, Wednesday, April 15th at 7 p.m. Pacific, or Saturday, April 18th at 10 a.m. Pacific for those of us who don't happen to live in American time zones. So we still have a chance to get our hands on some of those tickets. And like, there's some changes from last year with the Eventbrite system, right, Perk? They made it a little bit better, in my opinion.
Yeah, Eventbrite last year was the first time they used it, so there were some, bugs with the system, but there were two big changes. One is that the barcodes are delivered immediately to the ticket buyers and are accessible via the Eventbrite account.
Right.
And the other one that's pretty big, I'll just read directly from this, is people in the waiting room will no longer be sent back to the event page if their turn comes up, but the number of tickets they requested is not available. Instead, they'll remain in the waiting room and retain their position in line until another order for the quantity of tickets they requested is released back for sale. So those, I think, are two big changes. They listened to some feedback, and hopefully will be a little smoother this year to purchase.
Fingers crossed, yeah. I mean, I know that there was a bunch of people who had problems last year, and I think this waiting room bug, which they're talking about, is kind of hard to sort of wrap your head around. But I think last year what was happening was that people were like having too many tickets on their turn or something along those lines, or the tickets weren't being returned back into the queue.
Yeah, like if you wanted a clump of 4 tickets, and then when you were up for line, there wasn't a block of 4 tickets available, you would be kicked back to the waiting room, and someone that only wanted 1 ticket would be ahead of you, which seems kind of unfair. So.
Yeah, definitely. So this sounds like it's a fairer system, and I think the barcode being delivered immediately is a really, really nice change, because it stops that additional moment of, oh my god, stress, because then like in May, what was it, like late May, I want to say, last year, we were all like frantically F5ing our email to try and make sure that our barcodes had come in, and then you wait 10 minutes after someone's tweeted about it and you're like stressing that your barcode isn't there for your BlizzCon ticket.
Yeah, it's also good that it's also sent to the ticket buyer as well as the person that it's for, so you're not like, did I get this, or did my friend get this? Oh no, who's going
exactly.
to BlizzCon?
So hopefully that will have a bunch of additional clarity on there for people buying tickets for BlizzCon. But of course, the people who are actually buying tickets for BlizzCon are a relatively small percentage of the people who actually get to enjoy it. So the virtual ticket is a really, really cool addition there. So what we get from that, you get obviously access to the live streams. You get the additional video on demand stuff as well, and Perk's favorite Murlocs obviously are involved.
Yeah, you get a Murloc pet. I wonder what it's going to be this year. We should start looking in the data for suspicious pets that are called like blank template pet,
Yeah, because it was there. It was there for ages last year, wasn't it? And we didn't know what it was.
It was like BC01, and then we're like, it's
yeah, we need to start a little flag that brings up anything with the words BC in it, so we can figure out the pet early, because we're evil like that. But yeah, you also get goodies for other games with the virtual ticket. You get things like StarCraft decals. Last year it was some Diablo wings, I think, or sorry, that was the year before. Last
the
year it was the transmog sets for Diablo.
You get the Hearthstone back.
Hearthstone back, card backs, Heroes of the Storm things. Oh, Norax84 in chat says an Overwatch Murloc.
Ooh,
that would be cool. I don't know, like, how they would do that.
I want a Zarya follow.
A Zarya follow would be amazing. Like, how do they fit that?
Be a body card in my Garrison.
How do they fit that thematically into WoW? Yeah, she could be a hunter, I guess. Like, she's got a gun. Yeah. Like a big orc lady hunter with pink hair. That'd be awesome.
I would like that.
Definitely. But yeah, that's definitely cool. So Rock the Tank says, need to verify that will show some movie footage for the virtual ticket for me to be interested. Well, the movie is releasing in 2016, is it not? So by the time, hang on a minute, is it 2016? I want to say it's 2016. So. Yeah, so by the time BlizzCon rolls around, we'll definitely be getting closer to that. So
yeah, I mean, if there's a panel, we'll definitely see whatever they show on the screen for the panel.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like, it's a case of the only thing that you miss out on by getting the virtual ticket as opposed to the physical ticket is like the actual being there. And any chance, like if you're running a fan site, then you probably won't get developer interviews via the virtual ticket. You kind of have to be there for those developer interviews. But they never, from experience, and I'm sure Perk, you can speak on this too, from experience, they almost never actually release any additional new info in those developer interviews.
Yeah, exactly. One other thing that they do give you, if you're interested in this, is that if you attend BlizzCon, you get a swag bag with things like a little figurine. If you have been watching the show, we did the whole like BlizzCon goodie bag unboxing, and you get that if you attend. But if you get the virtual ticket, you don't get all the physical goodies. You only get the digital things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you get the. I'm not gonna like. Okay, I can get this bit down without ruining everything. So, for example, this guy was in the physical bag last year. We were lucky enough to get it in advance to do an unboxing of it. So that was very cool. But that's the only thing you're really missing out on.
And it's really cheap too. It's $40.
It's $40, yeah, $39.99. So that's very much more reasonable than the $199. Plus, of course, all your travel costs and your hotel accommodation and all of the other incidental expenses that come with BlizzCon access. So, like, particularly if you're in Europe, having obviously, as you can tell, lived in Europe for a long time myself, getting across to BlizzCon was always just prohibitively expensive for me. It's a chunk of cash to fly across the Atlantic. So the virtual ticket is definitely a viable option. And you get the cool in-game stuff with both kinds of tickets. But yeah, and it's also really handy because you get the VOD. So if there's two things happening at once and you kind of like to watch both, you can watch the live of one and then the video of the other. Yeah, it definitely frequently happens. And it's going to happen even more frequently this year as we've got so many games.
The problem, there has to be a WoW announcement because, we already have this expansion and there always is news of a new expansion unless it's like, the week after, like last year. So there has to be WoW news. Yeah. Overwatch, there's always something. Hearthstone is always churning out expansions and adventures at every convention. And, Heroes of the Storm, there's always new skins or...
Yeah, definitely. Like, maybe I wouldn't be surprised at all to hear, like, I'm kind of crossing everything to hear about the next expansion for WoW. Like, I feel like that we have to be hearing about this by now if they're actually on track for this idea of pushing forward the development cycle.
Yeah,
like, we have to be hearing about it.
6.1 was not super elaborate from a content perspective, so I think people want to hear about, like, what's the next big thing? Like, here's my new set of questing hubs. Like,
where's my next race
I can play, class, all that
stuff. Do you think they'll add a new race or a class this time for the next expansion?
I feel like they're due to do one because there won't be new character models, and historically there's always been something like a Death Knight or a Monk or Pandaren, so I don't think we'll get both again, but maybe we'll get one or the other.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. I'm kind of hoping personally, at least, and this is like, this isn't news, this is speculation, but I'm kind of hoping for like a sort of a move back to something more old worldy, like maybe let's discover a new continent which has been mysteriously hidden. Like, they love doing that. And then let's talk about, like a new race that's from there. Yeah, well, Emerald Dream would work, or like,
that's like
some kind of sea, under the sea, like Lost City of Atlantis feel type thing I would kind of like, but I don't want Vashir-y levels.
Yeah.
So I'd like a new race. And Rock the Tank again in chat says, no classes please, for the love of God. I kind of in agreement with that.
Yeah, I feel like that'd also be hard to balance. Like,
it's
more raids, like how, which classes have the same utilities.
Hubert the Fist says Ajara. Egremonia says playable Naga. That would be awesome. Like, that's been the thing. I don't know why that's so much the thing. I would like to be a Naga because I think they're cool. But Dread19 says that no under the sea, no sea please. Yeah, I really don't want to. Like, Vashir was cool.
Yeah, I don't think
the swimming thing. 3D combat doesn't work well in World of Warcraft. Like, I hate that flappy that flappy quest in the Mount Hyjal back in Cataclysm, that drove me
Oh
insane
yeah,
because of
that
the
daily
3D.
quest. That was the Joust
Oh,
daily,
yeah,
the
that
gold
was
one and the blue one. If
that
you
was
did
so
a ton of cards.
stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like as far as Overwatch goes, like Dreaded19 again in chat points out that there's beta, we know there's beta coming for Overwatch, so closed beta will be there at BlizzCon almost certainly. Whether they leave it to BlizzCon to announce Overwatch closed beta or whether they actually
Yeah, I mean,
announce
they've
it
hinted
beforehand.
it's, fall, and
They've said fall, and I think that November is kind of end of fall, beginning of winter to me at least.
it could
So
be
we'll
like the
see.
Warlords launch, how we had BlizzCon and then right after Warlords launch and people were hyped and went back and tried out Warlords. It could be, hey, there's BlizzCon and now let's start trying
Yeah,
out Overwatch as soon as
yeah. That could be cool. Like, take a key home with you. Like, everyone who buys a ticket gets a
yeah.
key. That would be cool. I would like that.
Yeah.
Certainly because I want to play it. I want to play it now. It's fun. I need to learn how to play an FPS so I'm not terrible when it starts. But yeah, so obviously with BlizzCon, we always do the Wowhead party. And this year, well, last year was a huge success in many ways, apart from one, which was capacity. We had like a real first world problem as far as party issues go.
Too many people.
Yeah, we had way too many
our
people.
party.
Oh no, this is the literal worst. But yeah, I mean, it is a real problem, particularly for all of those people standing in the line outside. And this year, the number one thing we want to do is get everybody who wants to be in the party as quickly as possible. So we are looking at expanded venues. That is like of our list, like Perk and I have been putting together our list for the party, and like the number one thing through to the number 42nd thing, it's all expanded venue. All of those points are we need more space. So we're desperately working to find a bigger place that we can get everybody who wants to be at the party.
Some other things we've been doing are also trying to think of like new cool swag ideas. If you attended the
Yeah.
party last year, we had so many prizes to give away, but we're thinking of even cooler things we could do, with Wowhead products. Like people really loved our Wowhead pins. Like, oh, maybe we could expand this into some other things. So no details now, but the party will have all the same awesome things that you liked
Yes.
before, and our site artist Noxie is already brainstorming different badge ideas and like all the little details and frames she's gonna use on the badges this year. So that's always really fun to watch her stream those as well.
Yeah, definitely. And if you've got ideas for things you'd love us to make Wowhead swag of, let us know. Send us a tweet on, we've got Olivia de Grace down there, Peculiar over there. Or just tweet Wowhead as well. If you're like, oh my God, you know what I would absolutely love is a Wowhead blank. Tell us. We never know. We don't have an unlimited budget, but we might be able to make something for you. So do let us know. But yeah, obviously a ton of cool organization stuff going on there. So moving on to the actual game news, we obviously have some more information this week about the legendary follower Garona Half-Orcan. So first up, she's actually now she's just got the 2 abilities now instead of the 3.
Yeah, so basically there was some confusion because Blizzard previewed in a blog that Garona would have 3 abilities suitable for a rogue, as well as the special Master Assassin trait. But when players got her, it turned out that she only had 2 of the rogue abilities, like an epic follower, and players were confused, but the Master Assassin trait is really powerful. It's increased success against all targets. So the reasoning is that it's like a super legendary ability, and it balances out her only having, the 2 rogue abilities.
Yeah, exactly. So it's basically, if you have one of those missions where you're trying to sort of shoehorn in, like I had one the other day, which was one of the treasure hunter missions, and I recently got a treasure hunter follower. So I'm like trying to shoehorn him in, just like trying to wiggle him in, even though he doesn't really match up with the stuff that I need from the followers. So I want more money because I'm poor. But the Garona Half-Orcan one there, you could just throw her in and she will, even if it's not perfectly matched up, she will increase your success chance in any mission. And like obviously use that wisely. Like don't make it to increase your success chance on a mission from 20% to 22%. If you've got a really bad composition of followers and you've got some waiting in the wings, waiting to come back off of another mission, like use her well. But it's a really, really strong ability. So I'm unsure whether I'm like, yes, 100% cool with that replacement for the 3rd ability. But what do you think, Perk? Are you sort of okay with it?
I mean, I'm sort of torn because there's this other follower in the patch, Harrison, who has this really awesome ability called Mentor, which anyone that's partied with him, their item level and level are increased to what Harrison is. So you could take a level 90 follower and put them with Harrison on like an I-level 615 mission for bonus experience, and they'd be treated as the I-level 615 follower and get all that experience, which I think that's That sounds really powerful. So, I'm not sure if Garona needs a little more of a push to get her into that legendary territory versus, oh, this
Yeah.
is a solid epic.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like there's sort of been that issue with the legendary stuff, like for 2 expansions now, where it's a bit better, but it's not really legendary like you feel like the
Right.
stuff used to be in the days gone by. But we've already got her into the mission calculator. So if
Yeah.
you need to see what Garona's master assassin trait will impact and like how that's going to change your missions, and you want to start like theory crafting a little bit, go ahead, check out the Wowhead mission calculator. You can do it obviously well before you've got her. But we've also got some really cool news about the alt um, assistance, let's call it, for the
Yeah.
legendary quest, haven't we? So we found out this week through the Warcraft devs Twitter that there's actually a boost for all of your alts. Perk, how exactly does it work?
So, if you've completed that step of the legendary quest line, when you go back and do it on your alt, you have an increased number of drops of the abrogator stones or the elemental runes. So, for example, people were reporting that they were getting +4 runes from every boss they looted on their alt on the legendary quest line, which is pretty cool because that's a really long part of the legendary quest line, so that can, shave off
Definitely.
parts of it.
Yeah, that's huge. And like, for example, if it's as far as we can tell, the way it works is that when you complete a given stage of the RNG collection on one character, like for example, I've completed the we call them alligator stones in my guild, abrogator stones part of the quest line on my main. My mage has just started it, and I'm seeing a pretty increased drop rate on my mage for the stones going through Heimel the second time around. That is a huge boon, honestly, because one of the most tiresome things about the legendary cloak in Mists of Pandaria was that there was literally no boost to your alt at all.
And it was so
basically.
powerful, so you felt like your
Yeah,
alt
you
just
had
not
to have
compete.
it. Yeah, you
Yeah.
kind of felt like you had to have it for raiding at least, like less useful for PvP, but still handy. So yeah, it's definitely need something that's really, really cool to have in. But so after you've actually got, how much work is it once you've got the ring to get Garona after that?
So when getting up to finishing all the RNG parts can take a few months, but
Right.
fortunately, once you get to the new stuff, it's only like 30 minutes of questing with, a kind of challenging stealth scenario. So it's not too bad. You just, it's like 5 or 6 quests, and you just pick her up, not much fuss. You don't have to like go to a dungeon or pick up stuff from a raid. You just do this, kind of like lore flavored quest line, and then you get her, and she's already item level 630 with all of her abilities. So
Awesome.
that's pretty cool. And we have our legendary questline guide is updated for all of the 6.1 quest lines and data and maps and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely all there. So you could just go over and check that out on wowhead.com. As ever, it'll be linked when the show is up on Wowhead on YouTube. It's going to be underneath the show right there. So if you're not watching on Twitch, then you can find it there. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Like our Twitch chat, as ever, we love having you guys join us on Twitch chat. So thank you for coming along. It's kind of talking about how the legendary is still like this very grindy RNG drop type of thing, and they didn't really learn from Mists of Pandaria. I'm kind of in agreement with that. Like, I was really hoping to see that the legendary in Warlords would be less, all right, grind out these, like it's 900
Yeah.
elemental runes.
I think the
lot.
issue is that when you start off, you're like, oh, I got some dungeons done in an afternoon, and I'll do Heimel for a few weeks, and now I
Yeah.
have 900 runes. Oh my god, like this is gonna go on forever with bad RNG. Like the steps seem to be increasing
Yeah.
in duration.
Definitely, yeah. And it's like the abrogator stones aren't too bad. Like, because you can run LFR to pick them up as well, but the elemental runes, particularly because it's such a big, like the most I've seen drop is 27. The least I've seen drop is 9. So that's a huge like 3 and a bit times difference between the most and the least. So you can get really unlucky and just find that you're collecting them forever. Like, there's people in my guild who are like completing that step, and there's people who are within the same raid group who are like halfway through just because
Yeah.
they've had bad RNG or good RNG.
That's not a good feeling because those rings have the 15% proc rate. So like,
Yeah.
I want my ring to be 20 eye levels higher and have the strong proc, and it's not. But I've been to all the same fights that you've been to, and
Yeah.
yours isn't as good.
It's really, yeah, it feels uncool. So I don't know, like, I mean, I'd like to say that maybe we'll see something with less RNG elements in future, but it seems like this is just the way that Blizzard wants to go to make sure that they're pushing you through that raid content. I was hoping for more awesome, difficult quests like the Tarragos's Rest Staff that you had back in Kata, where there was a bunch of like trickier quests to like go and kill a dragon, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like I know one of the Corona ones is kind of tricky, but I think we just want to see more of those sorts of things interspersed.
Exactly.
With
Yeah,
the
less
thing.
a better balance between those kinds of quests and RNG drops. But yeah, so another thing we do with the show every week is we talk about the new stuff that we've added on Wowhead. So we've got a bunch of cool smaller things this week, actually, haven't we? Like no giant, here's a whole new feature, oh my goodness, Brave New World type of stuff. But we've got a lot of smaller things which all add up to pretty cool stuff. So we've had an information perk added to Mount Page's battle pets, toys, and followers about whether you have them or not, right? So how does that work?
Yeah, so we've been adding, these every few weeks, and it's just good to finally just say, hey, you can do this. So if you have a character saved, if you log into Wowhead, look up a character on the profiler, which is wowhead.com/list. Just enter in your name and your realm. It brings up this character sheet of like everything you've collected. And if you click on the pin option on the header, it's a thumbtack icon. It then shows you across the site if you've collected that mount already, if you've collected that pet already, if you've collected that toy already, or follower. And it even works if you're like browsing all the followers and you're like, oh, let's see all the followers that can counter timed battle. Here's a list of 20 of them. You'll see a bunch of check boxes off to the side being like, oh, I have 10 of these already. And when I mouse over the tooltip, it shows me the abilities that my own follower has, not just the preset ones. And there's another checkbox reminding me that, hey, I've collected this follower. So super useful if you're planning out collections or you pin it and you're reading a guide. And you go, do I have this or not? And you look at the tooltip and the tooltip's like, yeah, you have this item.
Yeah, and how do people go about actually setting this up to get their characters linked to it? How does that work?
It's actually, so for most data, it's pretty easy. You just go to, like I said, just go to the profile, wowhead.com/list, and on the left-hand side that has the blue text, you enter in your name and realm and region, and then it just pulls things up, and you click on that pin button on the profiler page. But if you want to track things like followers, toys, and heirlooms, you will have to verify the character. Again, verify is an option on the profiler header. There's a little star, and you'll have to do something really easy like take an item off in game so we can verify that it's really you. And also go to wowhead.com/client to make sure that our add-on is running, and then it just will like seamlessly update that character page with your follower, toy box, and heirloom data. We know it's an extra step, but because Blizzard doesn't have this on their Battle.net pages, we have to do a little bit of a workaround, but we really think it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
So much information that way.
Yeah, there's a ton of cool stuff there. That all links into our profiler feature where you could go to the wowhead.com/list, which Perk mentioned, and just look at your character and get all kinds of stuff like from gear recommendations to boss recommendations for upgrades. You can find out about your collections, as Perk said. There's a ton of cool stuff there. So we do feel like it's worthwhile, although it is a little bit of an extra step to get your character linked and verified and then to make sure that you have the client running. It's a one-time thing, exactly. So you don't have to do it every time for every character. But yeah, so there's a bunch of other cool small things. We have mission pages now linking to other similar missions. So if you are, for example, like certain hosts on Wowhead Weekly, not mentioning any names, it's me, trying to make money in game, and you want to see all the treasure missions, you can actually go to one and then you can just see a list of all of them there, which is really, really useful. You've got all the missions requiring certain item levels, so that just allows you to navigate easily through the database and get quicker from missions to missions where they're the same type. So if you're looking for, say, a certain mission that requires this item level, you're like, wow, okay, maybe I should upgrade these followers. But then you want to know if there's other missions that are actually any good, whether it's really worth upgrading them to that higher item level. You can check that out with that listing thing.
Yeah, exactly.
We're also obviously continuing with our guides from Method, and they're working really hard on those Mythic guides right now. And I think they're doing a great job. The videos just seem to be getting better and better.
Yeah, they're just sort of in this groove where they're releasing videos before or while people are working on, most people that are not at Mythic level are working on those Mythic bosses, so they're just really timely, and yeah, I think they're fabulous. The videos are getting more detailed. They sort of touch on all the key points and, vantage points that players want to know about. Right now we have 5 written guides and 4 video guides. So that's really good. My guild right now is, I think, 510 Mythic. So
there's not a ton. There's not a ton of guilds that are actually at like 10 of 10 Mythic right now. So it's definitely, like, I think it's 9. in the world. So they're definitely very timely. And like, for example, my guild, less progressed than Perks, we're just coming towards the end of Heroic, so we'll be stepping into Mythic soon, and we're already starting to sort of tickle some of the easier bosses. And we're like, those guys are just fantastically useful, and they're doing a really, really good job of really setting up the strategy completely clearly, where you might see like kill videos from other guilds. Like, they're still awesome to see how people do it, but when you've got an explanation, like a sort of tactician, I will call him, like Roger Brown, talking you through all of the steps and ideas that Method uses and how they execute these fights, it's just super handy. Like, those guys know what they're doing.
It's definitely good to clarify that this is different from the kill videos this Method has also released, like the Mythic Blackhead one everyone's seen. They're also working on, as Olivia mentioned, ones that, you know, walk you through all the steps. So for example, their Mythic Imperator Margok video was like 40 minutes long because they were going through all the different roles you could do and the setup and everything. So there will be a Black Can version coming pretty soon of the same in-depth duration.
Yeah, it's also, to me, it's just amazing to see like the level of skill and dedication from these guys. Like, it's awesome. They figure stuff out that like silly people like me wouldn't do. Like, I wouldn't have dreamt about most of the stuff they do on Black Hand. I'm not that smart when it comes to raiding. But yeah, that's all of our Wowhead news for this week. So we've got a bunch of smaller things, but yeah, no big world-changing features, but it all adds up. So we want to talk about some of the other stuff that's coming into the game, but just to mention it now, we're actually going to make time. We feel like we might be under our hour this week. So if you want to ask questions, if you've got questions that you want to know the answer to, pop them in chat and we will come back to them. We'll be grabbing them from chat, so spam them if they don't get responded to. We like doing little Q&As, but we've been so long on the show recently that we haven't been able to. So yeah, do ask away in chat if you have any questions about what we're talking about. So the next thing we wanted to cover was some changes to healer trinkets. So there was a recent change that went in, which meant that thanks to this update, the loot tables for bonus rolls and personal loot would no longer give non-spirit items to healers or non-bonus armor items to tanks. Now, as someone who plays a tank, awesome.
We've heard about this on the show before.
Yeah, we spoke about this on the show. It's awesome for tanks because bonus armor is so darn good when you're a tank. But it's not quite as much fun for healers who have less of an interest in spirit. So there was a fix this week that changed the auto-repairing autoclave and the elementalist shielding talisman to have additional spirit, which was more in line with the spirit procs and the other procs that we're seeing on trinkets. So they were under budget, basically, which means that compared to other trinkets of similar levels, the allocation of spirit stats on these trinkets was too low. What we haven't seen, there's another trinket which we notice that is also very low on the spirit side of things. The Iron Spike Chew toy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's an int with the spirit proc, and people were speculating if that would be changed in any form, but we haven't seen that yet.
No, exactly.
Maybe we'll see it, though, because a lot of people were speculating, like, oh, like these trinkets are being changed to, this is the solution to get people to want to have spirit.
Yeah.
And Blizzard was like, no, they were under budget, and we're still working on a better solution to address this.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's one of those ones where the sorry, there's something weird making noises in my computer. Let me close a tab there. Sorry about that, guys. Like, sounded like a sheep or something. I was like, what is going on? But yeah, so the healer trinket changes were not really related to fixing the problem that certain healers don't really like spirit. They were literally just adjustments to these trinkets, but they weren't trying to fix that problem. And it's kind of tricky to fix that problem. Where should they put it back? Do they want to go back to the situation where healers are getting chance on intellect procs or chance on other procs? And I think, to me at least, the net of the problem, as someone who still heals but not as a main anymore, is that healers want throughput. Like, spirit is a personal choice for healers. You don't necessarily want spirit all the time. You don't want to max out your spirit, but they want throughput rather than regen. And tanks with bonus armor, it's so good that you never don't want bonus armor on your trinkets and your rings and your cloaks and your neck. But as a healer, you kind of want to balance that a bit more. And with the removal of reforging, those options are kind of removed. So it's certainly not a fix. I don't know what they should do to actually fix this spirit issue. Like,
yeah, I mean, it seems like it's an ongoing issue. Like, they've had, spirit converted to spell power. They've tried all sorts of things. I've seen, I play DPS, but I've seen people being like, oh, with this trinket change, now I have too much spirit. And I don't think that's a situation Blizzard wants people to be in.
Oh, definitely not.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I play DPS, but we do have Wowhead guide writers, Hamlet and Dayani. Dayani also writes our raid guides, who actually just made a podcast about this topic earlier today. So
well, there you
I
go.
will defer to their judgment on, they posit different solutions in it, and we can link to that.
Yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes on Wowhead. Yeah, and I like from my angle, I think that adding a throughput element to Spirit would probably be a good fix. It might make Spirit really overpowered, and it might make healing too strong, because then as your throughput increases with your Spirit, and then also your mana regen increases, like you're just going to be invincible at the end of the expansion. And I think part of the problem with previous expansion Spirit is due to item level escalation and people's spirit levels just getting crazily high as a result of that. But they've definitely put themselves into kind of a tricky spot with this this Spirit thing. And BM Jaeger and Rock the Tank in chat are both coming up with good ideas, like making Spirit act like spell power. That's a great idea. And, Rock the Tank kind of hits the nail on the head when he says that need to make Spirit work like bonus armor, healing done as well as regen. Not sure about that particular idea, but it just needs to be best.
I think they wanted Spirit to work like bonus armor, just isn't at that state yet. I think that this change works, really great for tanks. Tanks are no longer getting their crit trinkets, but they definitely have to keep working on some things. And I think that maybe we'll see. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we could see some changes in 6.1.2, or if not, then hopefully in 6.2. Because this is like a really widespread issue that lots of players are.
Yeah, and it's not going to get any better as we get towards the end of the expansion. Like, as someone who's healed a lot, like you don't start wanting more spirit all of a sudden at the end of an expansion. Like, if anything, that's the point where you're looking for crit and you're looking for haste and other throughput stats, not spirit at all.
And we'll be getting new raid gear in 6.2. So it's like, oh man, now I have this higher item level item that has even more spirit on it. And I guess I don't even need a neck with spirit.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh my goodness. Like, I can see, like, if I in this situation with my Resto Shaman, I'm actually looking again to be on set my loot spec as DPS in order to get the DPS trinkets, which is a ridiculous situation to be in. Anyhow, definitely check out Hamlet's podcast. He and Dayani are extremely knowledgeable people. They're both very, very skilled healers, very, very skilled theory crafters, and know a lot more than Perk and I on this particular topic. So we will link that in the show notes on Wowhead when this is up on Wowhead. So if you're watching on YouTube, go down below, click the link, check out their podcast. Another interesting bit of news this week is the addition of a 10% damage mitigation in PvP. Now, this is an interesting one to me, because when I heard about the removal of, and I'm gonna pat myself on the back a little bit here. When I heard about the removal of resilience from PvP gear when Warlords of Draenor came out, the first thing I said to the person who I heard about it from was, that'll be back before the second raid. I said, that'll be back, because there's no way that they can continue with the raiding and all of the other stuff that goes on in game and not have a separate damage taken adjustment in PvP. It just won't work. And here we are in patch 6.1.
How many months?
It wasn't many months.
6 months?
Yeah, 6 months. So I'm fairly
very long.
Yeah, I'm fairly smug. I'm kind of annoyingly smug right now. So what it is, it's basically the re-addition of resilience. It's not on gear, it's a flat 10% reduction, kind of like we had in Mists of Pandaria, where you had that on your person rather than on your gear. So it's 10%. Why have they had to do this instead of like nerfing specific classes? Like, the problem is basically that certain classes are doing very high burst, and the burst level is too high to get through these sort of longer games that they wanted in Warlords of Draenor. So the other options they would have had, like they didn't buff health pools up enough. So what they were trying to do to remove the need for resilience in game was to increase the health pools of players relative to damage. So that led to a whole host of other things having to happen, like mob levels of health points had to be increased as well to make them more in line with player health. A ton of like boss changes, everything like that, just to try and make sure that they didn't need resilience. And unfortunately, it seems that they've actually come to the conclusion that because of the bursty nature of damage from certain specs, they've actually had to bring resilience back in the form of this 10% debuff. I mean, the question is though, like, given that this is applied across everybody, is it actually going to fix anything?
Yeah, like, are the comps that are still very strong, are they still going to be overpowered if everyone's getting... changed equally.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting situation. Like, I mean, arguably the strongest healer in, I say arguably by just about everybody, the strongest healer in PvP right now is a Resto Druid. And they're in a good position. Like, and this removal of incoming spike damage is only going to make Resto Druids stronger. So in a way that might not be a huge contributor to removing that particular problem, but there definitely needs to be more changes. And this isn't the only change that they're making to try and fix these kind of problematic comps right now. Like, there's been some big changes coming into Feral and certain other specs as well to try and fix the crazy burst damage.
I think I remember some like hotfixes where it's like, oh, this ability works the same as before in PvE, but we're adding this PvP component to it to tone it down in that area.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think it's ever the case that they don't want to make the game play differently in PvP to PvE. But I think this resilience change is kind of necessary in order to allow them just some kind of tuning in order to actually make sure that PvP damage isn't out of control without having to, like, I mean, they would have to do a ton to get this change in without re-adding resilience. Like, imagine they'd have to, like, player health pools would have to increase.
Yeah. I'm glad Blizzard wasn't stubborn about it. Like, oh, we remove resilience and we're going to make this work. You know? Yeah. I'm glad that they were adapting to what they were actually seeing in front of them. And we're like, okay, well, maybe we actually need this. This is the best solution.
Definitely. And I think it's cool that they're doing it. I definitely don't know that it's actually going to repair the problems that they're seeing right now, but it's a step in the right direction for sure. And it just allows them the ability to tune it further. So yeah, we wanted to talk also about some of the raiding that's going on. And actually, BM Jaeger says PvP has always played differently than PvE, so I don't really get that excuse. And I can see, like,
there's always tension.
There's always tension. Like, as someone who's been a PvP-focused player for a long time, there's always tension between the two camps, let's say. It is actually permitted to do both, but there's, you are allowed. But I think it's a case of they want you to, like, say I'm a PvEer, and I've never really done an arena or something like that. Like, imagine that, and I want to step into a battleground, and I don't want my abilities to work differently. Like, that's what they're kind of shooting for. They don't want your Frostfire bolt that does a ton of damage to a mob in PvE. They want that to feel similar in PvP. And, like, there are some exceptions to the rule that exist already. For example, like, lay on hands as a paladin, you can't use that in arenas. You can in battlegrounds. But that's a change that already exists. But they want to avoid that as much as possible. And I think that's a good goal because it makes it easier for players to cross between the two disciplines. Like, it makes it easier for someone to go PvE to PvP and vice versa, because your abilities work roughly the same in each. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're just talking about, like, oh, what are strong class comps in high-end arena, but you also have to keep in mind that there are lots of players that, are terrified when it's Children's Week and it's, oh god, I have to do a battleground for the first time, like, what buttons do I hit? And you need some sense of familiarity, so it encourages PvE players to want to at least try PvP, and it's not totally alien to them.
Exactly, yeah. Like, if all your spells work differently, you just go in on this character that you know really well in PvE and just be like, oh my god, what do I even do? Like, I remember the first time I did an arena on my paladin back when I first started doing arenas, and I was mashing that lay on hands button. I was just so confused. But yeah, I think avoiding that is an admirable goal. But yeah, so moving on. Thank you for the question, by the way. Do keep dropping your questions into chat. We've spotted a few. We'll have to scroll up to get them because I'm being slow. But we wanted to talk a little bit about where we are with raiding right now. So the Iron Assembly LFR is open. Hooray. Beast Lord Darmak, Operator Thogar, Iron Maidens. So I was really excited that Thogar was in.
Yeah, I've heard bad news about Iron Maidens, though.
Yeah, which I find strange, because, like, having done the fights, I would have thought Thogar would be more difficult for people. Like, I think
maybe it's a scaling issue, like the turrets are doing more damage than intended and people are not following directions plus bad scaling things equals disaster.
Yeah, I could definitely imagine with Maidens too many, like, the wrong people just being like, oh, there's a mount thing on this hook, I'm just gonna go.
Yep.
I'm just gonna go. What am I doing over here? Okay, I went. So okay, I'm just gonna die. That's apparently what's gonna happen. So I could totally imagine that, because I think that definitely, like, we touched on this last week as well, Foundry was more tricky in LFR than people were perhaps expecting, having been through High Maul. So it's definitely the case that it's more difficult, but I don't know, like, looking forward to having Beast Lord Thogar and Maidens available in LFR for some comedy if nothing else. And of course, we've got guides for these, Perk, haven't we? We've got a ton of guides for Black
Yeah,
Rock
the
Foundry.
normal and heroic ones sort of go over what is, different or not present in LFR, so you can just jump to that section. And the quick tip guides are pretty useful as well, just being like, okay, range DPS, like these are the 3 things I have to know on Beast Lord, so I don't mess up and have people be sad at me.
Yeah, exactly. Like the quick tips are so awesome for that. I can heartily recommend those. They're written by very experienced players of every like discipline. So we've got melee DPS, range DPS, tanking, and healing. And I know the fights now. But I still keep them open all the time. Like whenever I go into raiding, I'm like, all right, get myself logged in, make sure my add-ons are up to date, make sure I've got the tanking one open on Wowhead, so I can just look at it for quick reference. Like just in case I forget what the swap point is in Beast Lord Darmak or something along those lines, it's super, super handy. And it's just enough information to not make a total fool of yourself. Like I'm using the one for the range DPS for my mage because it's just so different when you change roles as well. So they're really, really handy. And interesting news this week that we've had 2 high-level raiding guilds kind of call it quits on the world first race at least. Like I don't think that they're one of them is dissolving completely.
Right.
But one of them, Blood Legion, is just kind of stepping back a little bit. They're reducing their hours. They're still going to be raiding, but they're not going to be doing the crazy hours and the crazy amount of time. So what was the name of the one that's just actually disbanded?
Nightmares Asylum.
There we go. Thank you very much. My brain just derped on that one. So I kind of wonder with this whether there's actually been a shift in raiding culture that's pushing these guilds out. Like, what do you think, Perk? Because Blood Legion's post was kind of pointing in that direction, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some merit to it. People get older, they get jobs, they're more demanding, they get married, they have kids, they move, they have to take care of parents. There's lots of things that can come up and, you can't just, it's not like, oh, I'm in college, I'll just raid super late and get the boss down or go on a vacation between breaks. And, other responsibilities do come up or maybe you just get tired of doing the same thing. So we've also seen sort of less guilds, raiding as long. I remember, back in Wrath, it was like, if you raided 4 days, that was considered light compared to guilds that just did 5 days. And now 4 days would be considered pretty advanced, and most guilds are 2 or 3 days. So I think that there's something where as people get older, their responsibilities do tend to eat into things, and most guilds can reach a decision like Blood Legion where they can't, raid hardcore for a month straight because real life aggro suddenly piled up. But I'm curious what that does mean for the, sort of world first scene and the prestige of it if there are less competitors and people's reasoning for not killing the bosses is, well, I had to do these other priorities, not, oh, we're not good enough to do it.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting situation where, like, we've got a bunch of EU guilds now which are really, really heavily in the top 20. Like, historically, we've always seen a sort of balance towards EU in that top 20, but it seems now that like Midwinter is the US's last great hope. Like get behind Midwinter, Blood Legion fans, because they're the only people who are actually like pushing really hard for US. They're world third in Black Rock Foundry, world first in US first in Black Rock Foundry, world third.
Yeah, but that was still there's a big time gap between
there is
EU second.
Big time gap, yeah. And I think Blackhand was just crazy difficult. And like Yizzles mentions in chat, Exodus called it quits back in 2013. We had Vodka go as well. And I think it's like, obviously there are a lot of raiding guilds disappearing. Like Paragon called it quits for a while, but now they're back and they got world second on Blackhand. And they had a difficulty with, like, because they only recruit Finnish language players.
Right.
And that is a massively smaller player pool than the other guilds have to pull from. But yeah, and it's interesting to see that, like, there doesn't seem to be a huge number of EU guilds wrapping it all up and quitting. Whereas there does seem to be a larger, by comparison, number of US guilds. And I don't know, like, we were talking about this in our work chat the other day, and I don't personally know what it's down to. And you brought up the issue of like holiday time and availability and that kind of thing.
Yeah, like maybe the US has less holidays or, different benefits you get from work. There also might be a cultural thing, like, Blood Legion, for example, they're still raiding. They're just cutting back their hours.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if a European guild would make that same type of announcement, like a European top 20 guild would say, oh, hey guys, we're still raiding, we're just not going to be raiding as much. So I'm just not sure if maybe being in the US, we're not aware of European guilds that are, high up but not world first, going through similar things. But I do think
Yeah.
it is affecting the US more, just seeing the balance of EU to US guilds that are
Definitely.
killing things.
Yeah, and we're also seeing obviously like the previous Oceanic guilds like Ascension, who are still top 20, like they would have previously been considered US. So I think that that's having an impact on it as well. Not that I'm saying that obviously all of the top US guilds are actually now in Oceanic realms, like that's just not the case, obviously. But yeah, I do think there's a definite shift. And like as Radar 3D points out, as a European myself, I'm very aware of this, that Europeans do get a lot more holiday per annum than US players do. So that's going to have an impact for sure. But I think there's also just a sort of like the hardcore PvE side is just doing better in the EU, and it's kind of a self perpetuating issue where if you're in the EU playing now and you want to kind of be a hardcore raiding type, who have you got to look up to? Like you've got Exorcist for the Russian players, you've got Ascension, you've got Envy, you've got so many people there out there who are doing this kind of raiding that it's you've got so many options. Like if you're someone who's just starting to really get into raiding in WoW, you've got a huge list of that WoW progress front page of guilds to apply to. So that means that you've got more people being like, yeah, I'm going to aspire to getting into Method, or I'm going to aspire to getting into Envy, or I'm going to aspire to getting into Exorcist. And you've got such a long list there to go through. Whereas in the US,
and they've been there for a while too. Like if you've been doing this in Burning Crusade and being in this world first mindset, you can sort of get used to the groove of like, okay, like this is what we have to do when there's a new tier, and like this is the mindset, and this is how we take off, and this is how we fix our mistakes quickly, and this is how we don't have drama, and this is how we prep in between tiers. And it's harder to get that off the ground if the top guilds keep dissolving in your region and there's new leadership and not as much experience.
Definitely, yeah. It's certainly it's a problematic situation for the US, and I hope that they actually like Midwinter are awesome and they're great people and they're really, really obviously very, very good raiders. And I hope that they can sort of be the start of a new scene in the US where it starts to grow again and we see more and more US guilds coming in. I definitely don't think that it's related to the content in any way.
No, I would agree with that as well.
No, I just don't think that that's the case. Anyhow, let's hit a few of your questions. We've got a few here from different people. So BM Yeager asks, do you guys think the Garrison stable is worth keeping around after getting all the mounts from it? I've been debating tearing it down. What do you think, Perk?
I would tear it down because the mounts are account wide. And right now, I started off with the stables, and now I have a barracks up. And why am I blanking on my other large building? Come on, there's only 5 of them.
Spirit Lodge.
Yeah. So, I mean, just like the barracks are good because it just takes so much longer to level up all the bodyguards, and having those bonus experience missions are just a constant source of usefulness, especially if you have an inn and you're always trying to level up new followers.
Yeah, so definitely.
The speed boost you get from the stables, it doesn't stack with everything, so it may not be as big of a boost as advertised for you.
Yeah, definitely. I would completely agree with that. Like, for me at least, don't bother keeping it around after you've got everything you want from it. I've certainly done that with other buildings as well. Like, for example, I had the Gladiator Sanctum as someone who enjoys PvP, and I've just built, like, I had it on my Paladin, I got all the gear from it, I got rid of it, I just built one on my Mage. Like, once you've got everything from those buildings, you don't need to keep them around because you might want something else. Like, I will almost certainly get it back when I'm feeling a little bit wealthier in game. But I wanted to bring them in buildings which are more of a money maker. So I don't, like, I've done the Colosseum a few times. I keep not winning it and I keep QQing endlessly about it. But I want the Lady of War title, so I will probably rebuild it. But right now, because medium buildings are so good, I put some other ones in its place.
Yeah.
And while there's obviously the necessity to re-level them, you still have access to the blueprints, so it's not a huge hassle to redo it. But yeah, I definitely think, like, and Ryan Overall is saying in chat as well that he's done exactly the same thing, torn down his stables after getting the mounts to replace it with the Dwarven bunker. So I think there's a decent consensus. But yeah, so anyway, moving on. Dowland Lee, how do you feel about adding new class combinations? And is there a certain combination you want to be able to play? I would say Worgen Paladin. Perk, I'm going to bounce this one on to you.
So I know Crafticus on Twitter, one of the WoW developers, has been talking about, like, oh, I love gnomes. I would love to see a gnome hunter. And I know that's a really popular idea. Personally, I would like to see a Night Elf Warlock, because I think that would be an interesting lore backstory for it. I'm not sure if Blizzard would agree with me if they would say that's going too far. if Night Elf mages are the farthest they'll go, but I think it could be really interesting after the Night Elves were shunning magic for a while due to all of the, early problems with the Sundering. And yeah, I would like to have a Night Elf Warlock also so I can dress up my character in cool Warlock things as a Night Elf.
Yes, that would definitely be cool. For me, I think I would like to see more Horde Paladin options. Like, I want undead to be more things, and I think that it's mostly just because I really like undead. And I think that's fair. That's a good reason. But yeah, I'd love to see undead paladins and death knights is what people always say to me when I say this. But I want an undead paladin. Like, I don't like the bells so much. I like undead characters, and I want to have more of those. So yeah, definitely more undead options. I think I would Cubinek in chat. Gnome druids, because think of the tiny bears and the tiny kitties and the tiny moonkim.
The skins for them, that would be cute.
Oh, that would be so cute. And actually, I know that,
with like a gear tattoo.
Oh yeah, like a tiny little bear. That would be so cute. Like, that's just kind of me being like girly and liking cute things. But yeah, like, I definitely would like to see gnome druids, gnome hunters as well. Like, I definitely would love to see that. I think they would be so cool. And I know that's a race class.
The pets would be as big as the gnomes.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And I know that Gnome Hunter is a race class combination that people have asked for a lot.
Yeah.
Because gnomes actually are the one race that actually has fewer class options than others because of, like, I don't know why that's the case. I don't think it's because Blizzard hates gnomes. But I definitely would like to see more gnome options. Gnome druids would be my number one, but I could see Blizzard not wanting to do that because they'd have to make new versions of everything that were tiny.
Yeah. And then the Horde needs a new type of class that's a druid, and that's a druid, and more balancing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it would be difficult to like move it around a little bit more. I definitely want to see more undead options too. So Clinch7786 says, I realize you said you don't want a new class, but if one were to come in, what would you like to see, Perk?
It's really hard to say because there seems to be some issues currently just keeping everything balanced, and there's so many specs, and I think, I don't know, it's just really difficult because like, just from a balance perspective, I'm not sure if it's what the game needs right now. So it's not something I really think about when I'm like, oh, I think this would be not ideal for the game, and let's imagine something that could mess it up more, give us more hot fixes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, I completely agree with Perk. I don't think we need another class at this stage. We're already having enough trouble balancing like other classes within that, and it's already tricky for PvP and it's already tricky for PvE. That said, if we were to ignore all of that for a second and ask what we'd like, I would love to see a ranged, tanky, kind of magic tank type class. Kind of like the Crusader.
Original Shaman?
Yeah, like original Shaman, like when they first came around, or like kind of like a Crusader archetype in Diablo, where you've got a very powerful character, sword and board, but they've also got good ranged attacks and the kind of like the light type, the light powered kind of thing, like the Crusader has in Diablo would be kind of cool. To have that on a more of a range, like a sort of range tank weird character like that. And like other people have mentioned before, the idea of a sort of bard class, like a support class that's more buffing and support focused than like a pure healer. And I have no clue how they would work that into the game. No clue at all. Fortunately, I'm not a game designer, so yay. But yeah, I would definitely love to see something like that. Yizzles in chat says like a soul twister class with tank healer DPS support, where you lose the DPS or healing to support the raid with more cooldowns, etc. And yeah, that sounds cool. Like, I would definitely be interested. Like, the idea of a soul twister, like a dark tank. Oh, an Aralith. That's a great idea, Aralith. Engineer class. Mechanical and pet turrets. That would be awesome, actually.
That sounds very cool. Engineering bonus to that class.
Yeah, yeah, definitely an engineering bonus. That would be awesome, actually. I think your idea, Aralith, is better than my ideas for sure. That's a very, very cool idea. Moving on, Aphrodite says, do you think the Horde Garrison got screwed? Just faction change, and the Alliance Garrison is grander, better layout, and buildings look amazing. Your own castle. Perk, what do you think?
Yeah, so, I mean, my character's Alliance, but I played both on the beta, and the Alliance one seems to be in a nicer area, like I could actually see living there, while the Horde one is sort of buried in the snow, and I think that, I mean, mood-wise, it feels the Alliance one just feels more bustling and alive, and there's like plants around, and the lighting's really cool, and there's blue and purple. And to me, the Horde one seems a bit desolate, or just, I don't know, it feels a little more depressing and bleak that you're in this area that has no vegetation and you're fighting against the odds buried in the snow. But I mean, you play Horde, so what's your take on it?
I mean, my take on it is pretty much the same, actually. Like, I think also that having spent most of the latter part of the last expansion, like, we were raiding Orgrimmar. So we have seen a ton of Orcish architecture, a ton of spikes, a ton of red, a ton of those little, like, tenty, like, awning type things, and, like, cloth on spikes and rock and spikes and rock and red. And I'm just kind of tired of it. And I was tired of it at the start of this expansion because we spent so long in Orgrimmar. And, like, I was literally sitting in my garrison yesterday evening on my mage. Like, I have 3 level 100s now, and on my mage, which is the most recent one. And I was just like, man, it would be so cool if we had, like, Forsaken architecture in these garrisons. Like, I would have loved any kind of architecture except for Orc. Like, anything. Give me anything, but not Orc.
Like, I know the Horde buildings have little details. I think the Enchanting one has some sort of troll shield on it. But it's not very, in your face when you just have these spikes and red everywhere on top of everything.
Yeah,
and I think the Alliance one tries to blend. I mean, they've got the fountain in the center. You've got the Night Elf camp really close by to the garrison. It feels like there's a little more diversity than the Horde one.
Yeah, definitely. And like chat, you're making me laugh with the spiky spikes. I don't know if there's a similar thing in the Alliance garrison, but in the Horde garrison there's a vendor which will sell you an unnecessary spike, and you can position unnecessary spikes throughout your garrison, which I just find hilarious.
I don't think that's on the Alliance one, but yeah, that is funny. It's like, we heard your feedback, but we only have time to put this vendor in.
We heard you like spikes, so we put in some spikes. You can put spikes on your spikes and spike while you spike. Yeah, it's a little bit like that. And I don't know, like, in the question, Aphrodite said that he or she thought the layout was better. I don't entirely agree with that point, I have to say.
Yeah, I don't agree either.
Yeah, I feel like the Horde garrison, you've got, for the things that you're doing all the time, you've actually got better paths, like to get from the mission table where you want to be in order to do your missions outside. Like, the Horde just run straight out, downstairs, ta-da, you're there, the mailbox is there, your cache is there for your garrison resources. But with the Alliance, you've got to work your way through like 3 rooms, and it's a little bit trickier.
One thing that makes me sad about the Alliance garrison is that at the level 1 version, there are 2 entrances. There's the main entrance to the south, but there's also this option kind of to the northwest, which is really convenient if you're coming back from Talador. But when your garrison gets grander, that entrance gets closed up. So if you're riding around from Talador, you have to, like, go to the east, go to the south, loop around, go north to enter the garrison. I'm just like, I just want this path back. Like, this was so much more convenient. So, yeah, the flow feels a little awkward. Also, there is this one empty plot space right when you come in, which I don't think looks visually appealing. And it just feels awkward, like, why is the first thing I see this empty area that has a few boxes and stones on it? Like, could just be shuffled to the back or like a corner of my garrison.
Arrange my garrison better, empty. Peons. Yeah, exactly. And it's like MH Doe, I don't know if that's what they meant to be saying the name, like, but MH Doe in chat says, Horde has the perfect circle path to pick up and start my work orders. Completely agree. Like, I think the split level nature of the Alliance garrison is undertaken a little bit less conveniently than the Horde one. Like, they both have that split level, but I think the Alliance one is a tad more inconvenient than the Horde one. So anyhow, we have a bunch of stuff to say about that, apparently. Moving on to the next question. Dowland Lee says, do you like the new Dark Void Talon mount? Yes, I do.
Yeah, it's very pretty.
Very, very pretty.
Yeah. Very
A Gladiator Super Tease in chat, hi Super Tease, says, I want Garrison Wars. Oh my goodness, yes. I want
bring some more social interaction to Garrison.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we had this conversation a little while back about this idea that both Perk and I had about the content donut of how you're in your garrison, you feel isolated and cut off from the world. Garrison Wars, man. Like, I will pit my garrison against other people's garrison. Like, maybe that would actually motivate me to level up my main garrison building.
Your followers could fight other followers, so that's the reason why you want them to be epic and leveled up and have good weapons.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. Like, I would love to, like, go and pitch a raid against some other poor soul's garrison with my followers.
Followers brawl.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Like maybe like the inn could unlock it if you know your followers got into a drunk tavern brawl and you can challenge your friends into a duel. And
yeah, that would be so much fun. And like just pit off, like I've come with my Croman and I'm gonna take on Perk's Croman. All right, Cromans, fight to the death.
Who's
like that
the better traits?
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm gonna pick my like 5v5 team.
Yeah, exactly. Or like your resources, like you've got to build up resources like in StarCraft, you can use those resources to collect stuff, and you've got to, oh man, it'd be so much fun. I don't think this is going to happen, by the way.
I like this idea.
Yeah, it's a fun idea.
I want this idea now.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
about my Garrison.
Because I reckon Perk's Garrison could probably take mine on and win pretty convincingly. She's a lot better at this stuff than I am. But yeah, Melia EU says more options to configure stuff in Garrison, like more trees, plants. I would totally love that, but I would personally enjoy different architecture options more.
Yeah. I also want a lighting option that's better because I spend time in my Garrison and then it's like, oh, it always looks like it's night. Everything is very sort of dark blue. And I'm like, I want like a sun lamp or just
like
sun toy.
You're getting SAD sitting in your Garrison. You need like one of those seasonal lamps that just blast sunlight in. Yeah. Johnny Fiv 3 says your followers end up in your neighbor's stockades because they got in drunken brawls in the inn.
Yes.
That's so funny. I would love that so much. Like, man, Croman, you got drunk in Perk's Inn again, didn't you? Now she's got you for her mission. She's going to use all of your scavenger abilities on her missions for a day. Like, that would be so cool if you lost a follower to a friend for a day that they could use. I like this idea. This is a good idea.
Treasure hunters are like easily bought and you have to pay gold to get them back. Scavengers have to pay the sources.
That's awesome. All right, one last question then, because we're far too much fun talking about Garrison Wars. QuizTick asks, and this is an interesting one because we want to talk about this too. Can we expect more from Panzer in addition to Downtime Tuesday? We are super psyched to be working with Panzer. She is awesome. We love her. We love her content she's produced, and she's producing high quality stuff for Downtime Tuesday. Those videos are fantastic. And we definitely want to do more with her. She is amazing. She's a huge personality. She's great at editing and putting together video. We can't tell you anything just yet, but we are definitely working to get more of Panzer on Wowhead because we think she's awesome.
Yeah.
Long story short, but yeah, so cool. That is all we've got time for today. We've gone over our hour again. Gosh darn it. We're so bad at this sticking to an hour thing, but we had fun. Garrison Wars.
I'm definitely going to tweet about the Garrison.
Yeah, we're going to tweet about the Garrison Wars. So you can follow me on Twitter at Olivia D. Grace. You can follow Perk on Twitter at Peculiar. You can follow Wowhead on @Wowhead. And as always, you can check out all of the content except for Garrison Wars because they don't exist yet on wowhead.com. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for hanging out, Twitch chat. It's been a blast and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.